Hello, everybody. Welcome to First Person, a podcast about candid conversations with immigrants and first generation individuals who've created something meaningful. The hypothesis and the idea behind this podcast is simple that your lived experiences, especially as an immigrant or someone from an immigrant family, have a direct impact on what you create and can actually make you a better entrepreneur, creative, and builder. And today I am thrilled to welcome Alejandro Lopez, who sometimes goes by Alex, right?
Alex, yeah.
Yeah, a first generation Latino entrepreneur and founder of the premium brand Bloody Mary Mix, Toma. So we will be discussing a lot of different things, and I would say that Alejandro's journey is, or Alex's journey is nothing short of remarkable. So he has a background in advertising and marketing, working in financial services, tech, insurance, CPG, if I get this correctly, and is now the founder of Toma. So if you love Bloody Marys, this episode is for you. And Toma was started back in 2017, and we'll get into talking about Toma, but just super quick highlight. You can find it online on drinktoma.com, and you can also find it on Whole Foods and through all other kinds of distributors. So Alejandro, Alex, welcome to First Person.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here with you, Alejandro, or Alejo, that you sometimes go by.
Mm-hmm.
Those Colombians like to say Alejo.
Yeah.
I appreciate you inviting me to the podcast.
Awesome. No, great to have you here. And we'll be talking plenty about Toma and kind of how it started, how it's going, and kind of what the future lies for it. But I would actually like for us to dive a little bit into your identity and the role that your roots and lived experiences actually played in what you create. So if we just kind of take a step back, let's go back to the beginning. You actually have a fascinating background. Can you share a little bit more about your early life? You know, you were born in Louisiana, you grew up in Arizona and New York, and you come from a Colombian and Cuban family. I mean, talk about like such a diverse and such an interesting kind of mix. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So my my mother left Cuba in '68
Mm-hmm.
and entered the U.S. a year later after living in Mexico City. She moved to New York to Westchester County, where I currently live now,
Mm-hmm.
and she later met my father, who came from Colombia in '71. And after they met at a quinceañera, um,
Oh.
they later got married. And when my mom was pregnant with me, they were living in Queens in Woodside. My father was an engineer and got a job to move to Louisiana. So I would say that there was a level of comfort having more family members with them in New York, and the fact
Yeah.
that there was, even in the '70s, a lot of Latinos living in, especially in Queens.
Yeah.
It's like the melting pot county of New York City. And I think that was a culture shock for them to move to Louisiana. We were living just outside New Orleans. He was doing well at his job. He was pretty successful. My mother
Mm-hmm.
was decided not to work and take care of me, especially being in a new state, in a new country. I think one of the challenges I had growing up in Louisiana was the fact that Spanish was actually my first language. My parents spoke Spanish at home. My mother spoke Spanish all the time because she was with me. And once I started school, I had some social issues. I wasn't making friends. This is, the stories that my parents were telling me.
Yeah.
I was just speaking Spanish and just the kids didn't understand. I felt like I was an alien. So I was playing in the corner by myself, and the teachers had to get involved and say, "Look, you got to start speaking English at home." And my father did because he did for work. So eventually, I made some friends, and things were fine. He then moved to his job moved him to Arizona, where I think my parents enjoyed a little bit more. There was more of that Latino culture in Arizona,
Yeah.
with Mexican influences from the food and the culture. That's where we started eating a lot more tacos. But then eventually I moved to New York, and that's where I started my sort of grammar school years. Starting here in New York around third grade.
That's great. And so I guess, growing up, and I'm curious about even like how you identify yourself, right? In all of these different places, because to your point, it's different levels of what the community is like. So did it change, in these different places of how, as you were forming your identity, right? How
Yeah.
did you, do
Yeah.
you see yourself?
I think I remember more of my childhood in Arizona. I was
Yeah.
maybe 4 when we left, or maybe 3 when I left Louisiana. I was one of the only kids in my school that was Latino. I quickly adapted to the American culture. I loved playing baseball, playing soccer, skateboarding was big where I was living. I think, I think my mom really instilled in me that never forget your roots, but you are an American.
Mm.
And she was actually like very into American culture. Her first car was a Mustang Mach 1.
Oh
She
yeah, that's
loved the Rolling Stones and Creedence Clearwater Revival. She said that she learned English by listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival. I mentioned that to my friends in college and they all laughed at me. But yeah, I think that not until I moved to New York where I felt like I have more of my family in New York.
hmm
When I moved to New York, I was 8, and I started to feel more enriched in the culture. I felt like I had to adapt in Arizona because there really wasn't any of that.
yeah,
I didn't have any other family other than my parents, so we didn't have the extended family. I felt more comfortable moving back to New York because I had that support system. I had my cousins who were going through kind of the same thing. Um,
right.
Kids laughing at the food that we brought to school for
Mm.
lunch when we had leftovers. It wasn't like your traditional American kids' lunch.
Right.
But then as I got a little older, I felt really proud of the fact that I could share some of the unique things about our culture with my friends.
hmm
For example, actually, my favorite day of the year is Nochebuena, which is when we celebrate
Yeah.
Christmas Eve. And as more of a Cuban side of my family, because my father's side was all in Colombia.
hmm
So all of my family here was Cuban, and we would do a Cuban pig roast.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time bringing one of my friends. He had never seen anything like that,
hmm
and it was the first time he tried roast pork like that. And it was really cool. Like to me, it felt special. Like I gave someone else a beautiful experience that maybe I was taking for granted.
Right.
Um, and then it became something that people really wanted to come to. Like other friends were
Right.
like, I
Yeah.
want to be invited next year.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's so different. Sorry to interrupt, but because it's so different to, I guess, the way in America Christmas is celebrated, right? It's the morning after, and it's very much like a very nuclear family. Open the presents, right? Like, I think like what I'm hearing from you in Colombia is the same, right? Like you do celebrate on the 24th, and even here, like with my family, it's a party in a way, right? Like, so it
it's a party.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
There's food, there's dancing, so it is a very kind of different, experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is really about the food, and that's the part that I love the most. But it is about the music and the dancing. Like I would go to my friends' parties, and there was never dancing,
Yeah.
never.
hmm
And to them, like it seemed almost silly, like all these people like being silly and dancing and having a good time. But then I remember like the first time that one of my aunts who loved to dance, she grabbed my friend onto the dance floor, the makeshift dance floor, like on the patio,
Yeah.
um, and tried to teach him how to move, right? How to do salsa, how to do
Right.
merengue, right? So that was really fun. I at times you felt like you were really different, but
hmm
it was it felt special being able to invite people into your culture.
Yeah, that's amazing. And from our previous conversations, I remember you mentioning that in college, like once you actually got to college, you embrace your heritage even more, right? Like I think like even
Even
like
more.
teaching salsa dancing and so I'm
Yeah.
really kind of curious, like kind of like how was that experience of, it sounds like it's a little bit of of an evolution as you were growing up and you were kind of finding yourself and defining your identity. But just a little bit of that college experience, how was that for you?
Yeah, I remember when I got accepted to Villanova and I was looking at the population, it was like 3% Latino. It
Mm.
was like
Oh, wow.
92% white. The rest were black and Asian. Um, and I was like, wow, this is going to continue the way that my life has always been. Like in high school, I graduated. I was one of two, uh, Hispanic boys in my graduating class. So, it was my time of like really trying to figure out my true identity.
Mhm.
Um, I was bringing that love of food. I started cooking for some of my roommates when we, moved off campus and had our own apartment, a large enough apartment to
Yeah.
have friends over and party and I used to DJ.
Oh, cool.
So I would play, some, electronica music, house music. I'd try to mix in some Latin music. And sometimes, in the after parties, I would teach, how to salsa, how to merengue,
Yeah.
because people were just really interested. I think at the time, you know, Ricky Martin was, bringing, Latin music into U.S. pop culture,
Yeah.
and people really started enjoying that kind of music.
Mhm.
And so, like, who do you turn to? The token Latino guy. Let's get
Oh, he's a
Alex,
DJ,
right?
so
Who's
yeah.
also a DJ,
Right.
right? Um, so yeah, that was fun, right? I also had
Yeah.
to battle with my roommates and other guys that were jealous of managing a room of like six girls learning salsa dancing. But
Right.
hey, like again, it's that sense of pride of sharing that culture with other people.
And that sense of I think curiosity on both sides, right? Like that's one of the things that I'm
Yeah,
very, kind of conscious and interested in always kind of digging a little deeper is there is curiosity in being an entrepreneur, which we'll get to, but also in just reaching out to other cultures and to being open to learn about other cultures, right? So it's kind of like a two-way avenue in a way of how curiosity helps us connect, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you feed off that, right? Like people that are
Mm.
genuinely interested in learning the language, learning how to dance, learning the type of music that we were listening to. What else would you recommend I listen to?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think you have to be open to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so, as we again, as we were having some initial conversations, and I was thinking about, kind of like your personal and entrepreneurial journey that led you to start Toma, and we'll kind of get into Toma in a second. But you mentioned as well that cooking obviously was a big part of your upbringing. And is that kind of what led you to start creating your own Bloody Mary mix, right? Like that's a
Yeah,
specific thing to work on.
yeah. I remember my parents were struggling, financially at the time when I was at Villanova, and I'm the oldest son, so I was like, how do I help? I'm not obviously not producing any money right now, but I told my mom, I'm like, why don't you teach me how to cook? I was going into my junior year, the first year that we were leaving the dorm and going into an apartment off campus.
Mhm.
And I said, why don't you teach me how to cook? If I cook in my apartment, I'll save money. Don't buy me, like the meal plan and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And she thought it was a great idea. And we like literally sat, that summer, and she taught me how to do a couple of things. And I remember, showing up, in the first week with like, 10 marinated steaks and like 10 marinated chicken breasts and like,
Wow.
so I was kind of like doing like prep work
Yeah.
at home. And Villanova is not that far away from where I was living
Mhm.
in New York. It's about, 2.5 hours away. So the times that I would go home, my mom would load me up on more protein.
Yeah.
I would, I'd make some rice and frijoles for my friends. And at some point they started bartering with me. They would say, hey, you make me dinner tonight, I'll buy you like 2 or 3 beers at the bar.
Right.
So that was cool too. Like that was part of me like learning, how to not only cook for myself, but to cook for others. And I really enjoyed, serving. I really like that.
Yeah, and was that the spark moment of, oh, I'm interested in entrepreneurship, I want to become an entrepreneur? Was that the moment, or what did that
No,
happen?
that came much later.
Yeah.
My parents always instilled, work ethic, studying hard in school, right, to get a good, solid, stable job.
Mm.
And that's kind of, I mean, I started out on the ad agency side, working for various clients like Intel, Connects Toys, Shire Pharmaceuticals, AIG Financial Services, all these different companies and
Yeah.
brands. And while the agency world was not as stable as the corporate side, I did start to be a little more curious about how the company was working, right? We were
Hmm.
just fed a marketing strategy, and then we would have to execute on that from, advertising production, video production, media strategy, and all that. I decided I wanted to leave the agency side and go to the client side. And I really started to understand, working with various different business units, how the company ran. And at that point, I knew I wanted to start something. I had no idea what, but um, I love that entrepreneurial spirit
Hmm.
that I had in the last job that I was working at. So after I finished my MBA at Fordham, I started working for an insurance startup, and it grew pretty quickly. I think they were in year 5 when I started, already
Yeah.
doing about 250 million. But by the time I left, we grew it to about 750. That was a great experience. I was working for the chief marketing officer, running the marketing team, and
Hmm.
the 3 founders, who were the CEO, CFO, and COO. Um, and just having a seat at the table, had a real sense of pride.
Hmm.
Um, and I was given a lot of opportunity there that really opened my eyes to say, like, you know what, maybe I can do this myself. So, taking that love of food, and I started really getting into mixology. I started taking courses to learn a little bit more, both in food and drink, at ICE in New York City. And, I was getting into this brunch culture living in New York City. And I asked a friend of mine, how do you make your Bloody Mary? He was a bartender.
Yeah.
And I think that's when, I started to really experiment in my kitchen.
Hmm.
And what sparked there was really the idea of, like, how do I make this different? How do I make this unique for me?
Right.
And if people really like it, then great, right? And that's when I took this chipotle tomatillo sauce that my mom used to make, which has, obviously some Mexican influences. And that flavor profile that was both spicy and savory.
Yeah.
You've got this like citrus note that's tangy also from the tomatillo,
Hmm.
and this warm, heat from the chipotle. It really started to like make the Bloody Mary so different and unique, but yet still familiar to friends and family. They all started jumping all over it. They're like, you need to make this. Like, you need to bottle this
It's
now.
amazing.
So they started reaching out to friends, and like, who has a restaurant that you can go meet with. I remember this one Greek restaurant. Uh, this guy, this awesome chef from Brooklyn, had opened a
Hmm.
restaurant in Westchester, and he invited me to his kitchen, and he said, "Just come through the back door." And it was like that moment where I had this, like, VIP treatment coming in
You're
the back
in. Yeah, you're
door,
part of the club.
and I'm like already in the kitchen. He's standing there in his like
Yeah.
white, chef outfit, and he tries this mixer that I was literally making at home. I
Hmm.
had not commercially made it yet. He was able to describe the notes, obviously with a trained palate,
Yeah.
having gone to culinary school. He described it so much better than I did. He described it as just really well balanced, of acidity, with the citrus and all that. And I felt really proud that I had created something that someone like him actually enjoyed, because
Yeah.
I knew my friends liked it, right? But then I started asking sort of the business questions like, would you buy this? And would this be valuable to you?
Hmm.
And he said, like, this is the one big pain point that our beverage manager has, right? Create like mixing batches of this
Right.
mix every weekend for brunch. And I thought, well, if he's got this problem, do other restaurants have this problem? And I knew in my experience, like going to brunch all over New York City, that, you know, it's a hit or miss, right? Like you might
Right.
get one great Bloody Mary, and then the next few times you go to a restaurant, they're like terrible.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is that? Like it's a cocktail that has a lot of ingredients. It's a cocktail that a lot of restaurants want to make their own, and it's just not like a Manhattan or a martini. There's a fine rubric for it.
Hmm.
This was like very broad, and it confused a lot of consumers, and their levels of expectations were, up and down and left and right. And
Right.
so I was like, let me do some research. I had just finished my MBA, and I said, what am I going to do with all this time that I was spending, doing schoolwork? So I tried to figure it out. What would I do to produce it? I found a co-packer. I said, I'm going to produce my first batch and
Yeah.
see how it goes. If I can sell it, I'll keep going.
That's amazing. And I mean, obviously the whole process of studying, the business, right? Like even just like the logistics that you're talking about, but I'm also curious about, even the name, right? Something like Toma. I know it has a personal significance. Could you share a little bit of the story behind the name and how you came about it?
Yeah, I remember, one of the first things that I did before I even had left the insurance company I was working for was brand identity. And,
Yeah.
having worked with a lot of lawyers as an advertising executive, I did our intellectual property first, our trademark. And I thought, what is a name that people can really gravitate to, and that was simple, one word,
Mhm.
and that also conveyed the meaning behind the flavor and how delicious it was. So Toma came to mind because when I was growing up with my grandparent, going to my grandparents every Saturday, that was like a tradition. We were growing up as American kids, being exposed to a lot of American food,
Yeah.
and they were trying to keep that Cuban culture present. And so they were always introducing us to new food,
Mhm.
especially when guests came and they brought, flan, or they brought like a different cake or tres leches or whatever it was. And they would always say, Alejandro, mira, toma, pruébalo, right?
Love
Here,
that.
try
Yeah.
this, take
Hmm.
this. That sense of sharing is really about what Toma is.
Hmm.
And it's the pride in knowing that it's made with love and you're sharing that with someone. So that's where we came up with the name Toma. I mean, obviously it's a beverage product,
Hmm.
and it means to drink. It also means to take. Um, and it just, it fit great right on a bottle in terms of packaging design. And most recently in the last 6 months, we rebranded and infused more of that Latin vibe that is part of our heritage into the packaging design, which I'm really proud of.
And I'm curious about that, especially that, right? The Latino heritage, right? And kind of like who you are, like almost like the origin story, right? Like that is a now more prominent part of Toma as a brand and as a kind of like the position that you put out in the world, the messaging, the communications, right?
Right.
Is that the case, right? That like one of the things that you're trying to do here is kind of celebrate Latin culture and your Latin culture, right? Like your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about it is that many of the people that use the product, right, whether they're a food and beverage director, the head bartender, or even down to the bar back in the hospitality industry has, Latinos have been growing in population in those positions and have been moving up. And I think that they find pride in seeing someone like me come to them to sell to them a solution. I think I mean, I enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Being around fellow Latinos that are successful in their own right, seeing an entrepreneur come to them, sharing flavors that, they really resonate with. I mean, I think the most unique ingredient in this Bloody Mary, because most Bloody Marys are made with tomatoes, is the tomatillo.
Mhm.
And a lot of people resonate with that. And I'm happy that I'm able to share in that growth of the Latino community within the hospitality space.
100%. And even I think the use of language, I think as a way to celebrate the culture, right? Calling it Toma. Having kind of like I don't know if it's a tagline, but just the messaging around Toma con buena gente. So a little bit of michelada also, right? Like these terms that some people might understand what they mean, but they're able to embrace them, right? Like in a way, because there is again that curiosity of, oh, I want to try that. Yes, I love Mexican food. Oh, I love Bloody Marys. Oh, I love this, right? So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
a new tagline that we included on our new packaging. I wanted to make Toma a verb in the experience that they're having, right? Like
yeah,
whether it's, saying cheers or salud, like toma, right? Like it's
right.
something that
Yeah,
you say fun with your, something that's fun to say with your friends and family. So the new tagline is toma con buena gente, like drink
mhm,
in good company. And I think most cultures, like, people love to be around others and celebrating, or really just getting together and spending time talking over a cocktail. And
yeah,
nowadays, there's so many, non-alcoholic alternatives that people still feel more, a part of the conversation. Whereas some people like felt like they couldn't go out with friends. Now you can, and we encourage that too. Like you can make a virgin Bloody Mary and still have like a spicy, savory cocktail without the alcohol. So like everybody's invited to the party, right?
yeah. And it's cool. Like I think like the the idea of kind of using the brand as a conduit for connection, right? So it's a product, right? That to your point, people enjoy it, but it's a product that you have in a moment of connection with someone, with friends, with family, at brunch, at lunch, dinner, whenever you want to do it. I'm kind of starting to kind of get this idea that you're even looking at this as bigger than just the product, right? Like the product is that initial um, kind of way in that has a very unique and interesting story, but it's
Yeah.
kind of what it enables, right? In a way, is that accurate?
Yeah. It's not, a Bloody Mary is not like a glass of wine, right? You might
Yeah,
come home from work and just have one glass of wine, maybe reading a book before you have dinner or something like that.
yeah,
Bloody Marys are usually, consumed around a lot of people. It's one of the most popular daytime cocktails, like,
mm,
in the world. I would say, yes, brunch culture is really where most people are consuming Bloody Marys,
right,
but any kind of daytime activity, whether it's tailgating, at a football game, which is very American, or, at a campsite, right? Like people spending time outdoors, having a Bloody Mary during the day. It's all about being around others and sharing a cocktail.
one of the things that I'm interested in is thinking about Toma, some of the successes and challenges, that have gone through starting a company. Could you tell us a little bit about, so how do you initially introduce Toma to the market? Like what strategies do you employ? A little bit of kind of like that story. You started telling us a little bit already, but just if we continue on that thread.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the strategy was really to start with restaurants. I knew that there was a need for helping them streamline their bar operations. This was a cocktail that typically was batched. It wasn't something that was made, to order. So I started literally like driving around on my truck, delivering to different restaurants. And then I started receiving, calls from, local stores that wanted to carry it. And then I knew that I needed a distributor. And I started reaching out to some. One actually in New York reached out to us, and
Mm.
I was really excited about that. We didn't really focus on online or e-commerce until after COVID. So it was really like a grassroots, let's see how much impact we can have in our backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Starting with New York. The second state was Connecticut. And really we had to go out and do a lot of product demonstrations in different stores
Yeah.
to get people to taste the product. That was the proof point, like how delicious was it, for them to actually pick it up and buy it.
Yeah, no, that I think that makes sense. And I remember you mentioned that obviously the pandemic was a significant challenge, which for most companies, like obviously in my case, I think I shared this with you, right? Like I also started a company, co-founded a company in the travel space, and I think like we started this in 2018. We kind of went through the process of getting some angel funding, starting to actually did a lot of research, created an MVP, launched it in 2019, like November, I think, or October or November 19, and then COVID happened, and then that's it.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
Like the timing was crazy, and in the travel space, we couldn't recover. Like we would have to kind of. It's interesting. Like after the pandemic, we talked about it. Hey, should we start it again? But the behaviors of travel had changed, at that time. So it would just require a kind of like a big shift. But I'm curious. I think from your perspective, I mean, being in a restaurant, being at brunch, that was no longer a thing. So how did that affect Toma?
Yeah, that was huge. 75% of our business was in New York,
Yeah.
and a similar percentage was in hospitality. It's about 25% of it was in retail. And so during COVID, I mean, I was only, 2 years in, and, you know, we were selling product and we were growing, but, I hadn't raised any money yet. All the money was, bootstrapped.
Yeah.
Money that I had saved and put into it. I really thought I was going to shut down the business. All of these restaurants closed in New York.
Mhm.
Some of them never reopened. And then when they did, they didn't open for brunch. So, it was kind of like a double whammy where
Right.
it was a more prolonged delay in coming back into the market. So, fortunately, through some promotion that we were doing on our Instagram, we would see some organic sales on our website, but that had major issues. Like we're selling a 32-ounce bottle that was made out of glass. It's heavy. We were coming into a lot of problems with breakage, and then there's like customer service issues. Like you're having to deal with that, and that was a problem. So I started working with a company that uh, designs packaging for all different types of consumer packaged goods,
Mhm.
and they designed an insert that helped to protect the two bottles that we were shipping, because we decided the most efficient way to ship was in 2-pack increments. And that project started in Q4 of 2019. And
Mm.
so by the time COVID hit, we were 90% done. And in April, we were able to launch on our website with the new packaging, and it like changed like night and day.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
we went from 20% breakage to like 2%.
Mhm.
And then I thought, okay, this is viable. It was natural and organic. Like people were just flooding the web trying to find products because they knew they weren't going out to stores. And that was the only reason that we survived is the online sales.
Mhm.
In May, we got onto Amazon, and I would say e-commerce definitely saved the business for sure.
Yeah, and it's maybe it's one of those things that, in hindsight, right? It's an opportunity in a way, right? Or it opened up a new door that maybe it wasn't being kind of explored before, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even thought about B2B e-commerce, but
Hmm.
there were platforms like Faire.com
Yeah.
that helped us to sell. our, six pack case directly to unique retailers across the country, artisan retailers, and even restaurants. So they were finding us on Faire.com, and that was another revenue source for us. And we've been with them for probably 4 or 5 years now, and it actually helped us open up some other markets. Like, we were so focused on New York. Now we're in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts. But we started getting a bunch of retailers from, the Kansas City area. And one of the store owners reached out and said, "Hey, I introduced this to a distributor today because they
Mhm.
were in our store, and they're really interested in speaking with you."
That's
And
amazing.
so,
Yeah.
that was an opportunity that came from just online sales to a
Mhm.
retailer in Kansas City. So we have a distribution partner in Kansas and in Missouri, just because of that. So it definitely opened up a new opportunity for us.
As a solopreneur or as a small business, having a very small team, how do you manage the various aspects of running a business? I'm sure like the view of over the years have developed system routines of ways of how to stay organized, how to stay focused, how to continue moving the business forward.
Yeah. I mean, when I worked in advertising, it was all about project management. So I had that skill set. I had the marketing skill set that I brought to the table. I was always hiring freelancers, from designing the packaging to designing websites. I led, large scale projects that, I had a budget of $40 million when I was working at MetLife. I went to about 1.5 when I started working for the startup.
Yeah.
So I had to get really um, scrappy when I was working for that startup with a $1.5 million budget. When I started my business, I had zero. So like any dollar we spent was, we were in the red.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it was just about project management, being very organized, figuring out what our priorities are, finding the right people to help. I didn't have full time employees. I
Mhm.
just had some freelancers, and I knew how to manage them. So yeah, I heavily relied on our distribution partners as well. They have their own sales force, so meeting with them and trying to advance the product and get it into more stores and restaurants, helping them understand what the value proposition was for Toma, which was somewhat different than a lot of the products that they were selling. This was obviously about a great brand, great taste, great flavors, but also about streamlining bar operations. And I really had to explain to the sales force that you need to step in the feet of the beverage manager and understand what their needs are. So yeah, it's been a challenge being a solopreneur, but I've had great partners that I've worked with, a great co-packing partner that
Mhm.
helps produce the product, um, and then just drilling down on forecasting, like trying to understand what my future needs are going to be, and planning out what our inventory needs are, what our marketing needs are going to be to support that, and all of those things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm curious, as a Latino or as a first generation immigrant founder, have you encountered any advantages or challenges in starting a company, in running a company?
I mean, I had no idea how to raise money.
Mhm.
I my parents had zero connections. I don't know if I would say it's been a challenge being Latino. I've found some organizations that that focus on Latin businesses. Have learned from a number of folks through that experience in networking. I think the challenge is just raising funds, and
Yeah.
that's it, right? Like it. I don't see it as a challenge being a Latino. I think that in many ways there's been opportunity because I'm Latino, because
Mhm.
a lot of corporate entities or, hospitality groups want to see more diversity in the products that they buy. And we just happen to fit right in there and also have a great product.
Mhm.
I would never want to take the position of someone else's product if it's better than ours, just because we're Latino. It deserves merit, and it's a great product, and it should be in that particular, restaurant or whatnot. But if I'm given the opportunity because, they have corporate diversity efforts, then yeah, I think that that's great, because any opportunity that I get, I can pass along to someone else in the future.
I love that, and it just fits so well with I guess the thesis of kind of this whole podcast, that it is just kind of shifting the perception and the conversation around being from an immigrant background, that it's sometimes seen as negative, or can be seen as negative, or can be seen as, oh, immigration, right? Like there's the whole political side, right? Just the idea that at the end of the day, what makes us different is actually a strength, right? Like it's actually an
Right.
advantage, right? And it doesn't, and in a way, uh, yes, we all have what makes us unique, whether we're immigrant or not. But there's a lot in common. I think like that's one of the interesting things. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, there's a lot of kind of how we connect with each other as humans, that a lot of the maybe the the challenges that are kind of like out in the world tend to be more man-made in a way, or artificial, right? And
I,
because there is a lot that we can connect on.
yeah, I agree. And I just feel privileged to have been, accepted into the hospitality industry, not having any background. I think the challenge has always been, my mindset, right? And trying to fix that, because
Yeah.
I didn't have any food or beverage background. I didn't have any formal training, in the culinary arts or in mixology. It was all pure curiosity.
Yeah.
And maybe being fortunate to have, a good palate, to know what
Mhm.
good flavors are. I think that's been really the challenge, right? Is believing in myself, having a lot of doubt early on that
Yeah.
I could actually do it. And yeah, there's been some people that, have pushed back pretty hard and saying, you don't belong here. Like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And it's because I just didn't understand the business. I didn't understand, how it was sold. I didn't understand how to speak to, food and beverage managers. And that was just a learning experience, just like any learning experience in any job I've had before. Because, I've worked in so many different industries, having been in marketing and advertising. But now, like, I leverage the fact that I'm Latino and that it is different, because
Mhm.
there's so much competition out there that there aren't that many ways to be different, when you're
Yeah.
creating a product like this. And we lean in on that different flavor profile, and the people that are, resonating with more of that Latino vibe, more of the Latino flavors, it their eyes light up when I say
Mhm.
we craft our own chipotle tomatillo sauce. They're like, well, can I get my hands on that? And I'm like, well, we don't produce that just
Yeah.
yet, but we make
Mhm.
it just for this mix. It's like truly unique, um, and it's what makes it different, and people are certainly, picking up on it.
Yeah, and that it's real, right? That it comes from a real place. Because I think like that's the one of the key things from my perspective that I've noticed is, especially in the startup world, right? There is a lot of companies that you can kind of tell if the founder actually cares, actually is invested, versus someone that is, no, this might be a VC play, or this might be something that you might be just kind of trying to then exit and make some money, right? Like coming from the money versus, no, there is something here, whether it's a problem that you're trying to solve, or something that you want to celebrate, like in your case, food, and those moments of connection, right? So it's just interesting that you can tell that, right away.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. Like, there are brands that start off with a lot of funding, venture backed. The product might even not even be that good, but it's following a trend.
Yeah.
versus, a founder-led company that is being truly authentic, and really wants to make a difference, may not have the funding, which
Hmm.
makes it really challenging because CPG just requires so much marketing support.
Yeah.
And that's why we haven't exploded.
Hmm.
We don't have. I'll say it. We don't have lightning in a bottle, but if given the type of funding that we need, I think we can really take this to the next level. And actually, what you mentioned about the difference between founder led and like venture led, um, the first round of our brand packaging had more of me on it, right? It had my personal story, it had my signature on it, right? A lot of people like that in like the artisanal craft world,
Yeah.
but as I started to think about the new branding, it was really about the Latin culture and why it helps make this product so great and delicious and different. And I took myself out of the packaging design because I wanted it to be something that's bigger than just me. It's something about that the Latino culture can really resonate with, versus just supporting someone like me.
Yeah, and what's one of the things that I think is could be interesting, because I always get 100% understand that shift, and in a way, I could see how it opens opportunities to tell stories of other Latinos, right? Like I could see a world where like you're telling stories of different families and how's the relationship to staying together, the relationship to food, the relationship to drinking, right? Like there's like so much richness, I think, in the stories that can be told once you actually open it up, right? Like to kind of be able to be more inclusive of all the inclusive within the Latin community, right? Because it is very different. That's the other thing, that it's not just one Latin community.
Yeah, I mean, I
Mm.
have I have two good friends that own tequila brands, and man, just being able to speak to them about, and they come from very different backgrounds.
Hmm.
One grew up in Harlem as a Puerto Rican, was in liquor sales and said to himself, I'm going to start my own tequila brand someday. Um, and not only is there this camaraderie between us, being in the beverage space together, but it's like we're now sharing our own unique flavors and marrying them together to make a great cocktail.
I love that.
That
Yeah.
that's really fun too, right? And both of them have been much more successful than I have been. They've been in the game longer,
Hmm.
and they've been mentors to me, right? So it's just like when can I find that opportunity to do the same, for someone else that really wants to get into the beverage space.
Yeah, that's so important. The idea of community, right? The idea of finding the support, right? That can help you, right? And that might be able to give you advice. But I love the idea of also the other side of you now being able to actually share some of the learnings and some of the the things that you've learned, right, from this experience.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I get emails all the time. As a matter of fact, I spoke to a young girl who wants to get she's had a short career in operations and wants to now get into food and beverage. And I had an hour conversation with her about operations in my business, which is like the largest part of my time spent. Um, and we had a great conversation. I mean, she's
That's
she's
great.
Asian, and but we still had this connection of having a unique childhood, living with immigrant parents, and then like the real business stuff gets in the way, and it's just like we're trying to solve problems,
Right.
we're trying to grow a business, but those unique connections that you have with people sort of outside of work, is really important as well.
Yeah, 100%. So a few more questions, before we wrap up. I'm curious what's next for Toma. So what are you excited about? What what's kind of coming up? Like, how do you foresee the brand evolving, the company evolving?
Yeah, I'm man, this year I think is going to be a pivotal year for Toma. There are a number of different opportunities on both sides. Raising more capital to launch some RTDs, some ready to drink canned cocktails. We've done a lot of work on the intellectual property side and have that in place. But then there are other opportunities that could potentially be more of an acquisition. Finding a strategic partner that Toma can fit right into their portfolio and leverage the distribution network that they have. So we're entertaining a lot of different things right now, having a lot of different conversations. And it's really exciting because at the end of the day, I know how much people love this product. I don't necessarily have to be here to see it grow. It's like I want to see Toma become bigger and be shared with more people across the country and maybe even globally,
Mm-hmm.
with or without me. And so that's been like a major shift in my mindset about how I'm going to grow this. So it's fun. It's like, I've never been in this position before,
Yeah.
but it's really exciting to see the demand, right? Like people actually wanting to have these conversations. Yeah, I would love. I really want to launch the RTDs.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out the best way to market with that, whether it's scaling through, raising another capital round or acquisition.
Yeah. I mean, exciting, and looking forward to seeing where it takes you. And so, last question, just reflecting on your journey so far, what advice would you give someone, let's say an immigrant or someone from first generation that has an idea but hasn't started, or that wants to start a new idea?
Yeah, I would say find the time to do your research. If you're really passionate about it, you'll put away that phone, you'll put away that night out. It's going to be lonely,
Mm,
but follow your passion, share it with people as much as you can before you really, jump deep into it.
yeah.
And that, I mean, that's what I did. I have a marketing research background.
Hmm.
We've done a ton of research and tested a ton of things. I just did it with real people, and it resonated with people, and I decided to take the leap. I did it at a time where my son was 2 years old
Hmm.
and maybe three. Try doing it earlier if you can.
Right.
It's hard having kids.
Yeah.
I had just finished school, and the best part about all of this is my wife has actually done extremely well and has supported me through all of this.
That's amazing to have that support, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of entrepreneurs don't have that level of support. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of naysayers. I didn't have that. Like, there were so many people that were like, "You're going to be awesome. This is going to be great."
Yeah.
And I don't know if that stemmed from just my personality and my relationships with them, but no one told me no, at least from my
Hmm.
support network. So find the people that are going to be in your camp, because that's super important, and just follow your passion.
Amazing. Well, couldn't have ended on a better note. Thanks so much, Alejandro. Really appreciated the conversation. Lots of great learnings, lots of great insights. I mean, your story is so unique and fascinating, and I think like the journey of Toma and what you've been able to achieve so far,
Yeah,
where it could go, it's very inspiring. So thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate
yeah.
it.
And thank you for giving me the time to share this story with you. It's been great, and I just love what you're doing. So I hope you have a much success, because this is a really great idea that you had, and I think people are going to learn a lot from all the stories that you're sharing with people.
Thank you. I mean, I'm learning so much already. So selfishly, already, it's great. All right. Thanks so much, Alejandro.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. So that was my conversation with Alejandro Lopez, a founder, maker, and host at heart whose journey shows how culture, curiosity, and community can turn into a business. From growing up in a Colombian Cuban family to starting brunch rituals with friends in Astoria, Alejandro took a personal recipe and turned it into Toma, a bold, small batch, Bloody Mary mix rooted in heritage and built with intention. We talked about identity, flavor, and what it means to be a solopreneur, navigating operations, raising money, and adapting when things didn't go as planned. Alejandro's story is a reminder that your background isn't part of your brand, it is the brand. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Share it with someone who might enjoy it, leave a comment or review, and follow the podcast for more stories like this. Thanks again for listening to First Person with Alejo Largo, and see you next time.